We are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. Well, it turns out that Dr. I Am the Science is not only not the science, but was actually suppressing the science of his own employees and coworkers. Dr. Fauci this week pleaded the fifth over 100 times in the Senate hearing, refusing to answer for his transparently corrupt behavior during the COVID-19 pandemic. What happens next? Anything? What should happen next? We shall discuss all of that. Also, speaking of Chinese-connected individuals, the FCC has banned Chinese-made advanced robotics. Is this overreach or just good sense? I kind of lean towards the latter. And for Unhinged, cash reparations for slavery in New York, Mamdani pitches the idea, indicating that he is certainly more in line with the most extreme segment of even the DSA. All of this and more on episode 547 of the In the Tank podcast.
Fauci. Memories. Once you got the vaccine, hug your family. It's time to hug your family. Feeling so relieved. No lockdowns, we're free.
I just threw up in my mouth. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Everybody involved in this is fired.
Yeah, I inflicted that on everybody. I thought you got to smile a little bit, but man, does this topic trigger me. I am not going to be.
And this isn't the only one, and it's not the worst one either. I think Colbert has them beat on that cringe. But anyway, welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lucan, your host, and as always, we also have Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute, and Chris Talgo, Editorial Director and Socialism Research Fellow. Chris, the audience was asking for you last week. They said that you're actually not allowed to take PTO, and I think I'll probably tell Sam the same thing because he is on PTO this week.
No more PTOs on Thursdays. I'll make sure I get that memo.
Yeah, absolutely. Arrange your whole life around this show. Before we get started, you guys, because we are going to talk about COVID for a long time, I'm sure. So I'm going to get to this quick. If you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like this video. Remember that sharing it helps. I see there are quite a few people in the chat right now, the live chat. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming to the live chat. We love to see you there. But you can all click the like button if you are watching this on YouTube or Rumble. I don't really know how it works on Facebook because I haven't been on that particular hell site in a very long time, but I'm sure that you can like it or share it over there too. And you can hit share over on x.com as well. Sharing it definitely helps break through some of YouTube's suppression. Even just leaving a comment helps too. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. Alrighty, guys, we're going to get right into this. Like I said, we're going to be talking about COVID today, and I have a feeling that we're going to have some gym rants. Before the show even started, we were all kind of doing the, do you remember how this happened? Do you remember how crazy this was? Which is like 99% of the discussions that I run into with COVID. So we're going to do a little bit of that today. But we're going to get right into Unhinged here. Cash reparations for slavery. I don't really have an introduction for this, so we're going to play the video. If we can pull up the Mamdani video.
A commission studying reparations in this city recommended cash reparations for people impacted in New York City. Would you support that recommendation?
First, I want to say that I stand by what I submitted.
Yes.
It's the truth.
Yes.
It's not a personal assessment. And we often think about slavery and the complicity in slavery as being exclusively to certain geographic areas of the country.
Right.
Here in New York City, we were very complicit. And so I look forward to whatever those findings are. I can't give you an answer in advance of them, but I can tell you that this is critically important because this is also what it looks like to acknowledge what history truly was.
So, not a lot of detail there. It's this idea has been floated around for a long time. It's certainly not new. Mamdani certainly did not come up with it. The idea that New York City should be paying reparations, cash reparations, as always, the conversation on this issue always goes to how do you determine who gets reparations? What like tier do we do one drop rule? Like if you have any ancestors whatsoever who are impacted by slavery, you get cash. It's always very confusing, Jim. And I don't, I'm sure that there's some kind of a detailed plan that they put out, or maybe there isn't. I don't know. I really haven't looked into the particular issue so deeply because it just seems patently absurd to me.
Yeah, well, there's already been reparations. I mean, I did tweet on this on X the other day when I saw this because it's completely outrageous. No state in the Union contributed more soldiers to the Union Army during the Civil War than the state of New York, some 450,000. No state had more soldier casualties than the state of New York, 45,000 killed. So no state could top them in the price they paid in blood to end slavery in this country. And the idea that a mayor who is an immigrant from Uganda, who has been an American citizen for 10 years, is now going to use his position as mayor of the largest city in the United States and the financial capital of the world to say, yeah, we're going to figure out a way to pay reparations for slavery in a country that he just got to and is barely a citizen in. I tried to look at what the Democratic Socialists, the prominent ones that are now in elected positions, say, and I do actually try my best to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they are just their brains are so sodded with absolute Marxist nonsense and gobbledygook that they can't think straight. I don't really think that anymore, not when you hear things like this. These people are actually pretty evil. And the idea that New York or California is another state that's going to pay reparations when they were not involved in the Civil War at all, it's absurd. Reparations have been paid. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died to end slavery in this country. Not to mention all of the other actions that the federal government has taken over more than 100 years to I don't know, make up for it. I don't know if we want to say it that way, but it's absurd. My family came to the United States from Ireland, both sides of my family, at around the same time, around 1920, settled in New York City, as it turned out, where I was born. And they have no culpability in the legacy of slavery in the United States. So why should myself, a third or a second generation American, have tax money taken out of my pocket to pay for reparations for something I didn't have anything to do with? And obviously nobody alive today was harmed or was obviously a slave. But the reason this kind of discussion gets any traction at all is because of the corruption and the Marxist takeover of academia in the United States. Because the argument is that it doesn't matter that nobody alive was a slave. It doesn't matter that nobody being asked, and soon will be forced to pay, had anything to do with slavery in the United States. It's that the fact that slavery existed in the US, which, by the way, was not a unique thing. Slavery has been with humanity for almost the entirety of civilization. It has to be paid because of quote unquote systemic racism, because the legacy of slavery, the 1619 Project, all of that stuff has established a society in which Black Americans are continually oppressed. That's false. But that is the justification that people learn in universities. So, we talk a lot on this podcast about, the Gramscian march through the institutions of the radical left. These are some of the wages of that march.
Yeah, the first thing that popped into my mind when I saw this, because this is just like, boring, typical DSA stuff, except I recall a couple weeks ago there were some, when we were talking about the DSA platform. Well, the DSA has a caucus. Oh, and when I say DSA, I mean Democratic Socialists of America. In case we have new viewers, but so they have a caucus which is called the Liberation Caucus, which is a small group within the DSA, and they are explicitly Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, and they brag about that. Here in the United States, we have a Maoist caucus that is supporting candidates that are winning in states across the country in their primaries in blue states or in blue cities. So they support the program that's called, they're like the plot, I guess, that's called Land Back, which is basically like carving up the United States and giving huge chunks of it to tribes based on like past treaties that were violated or ignored or whatever. And it occurs to me that it's just based, all of this stuff is not really based on like helping people functionally, because what kind of reparations are they going to be able to give, anyway, like $250 or something if you're trying to divvy up the, I don't know how they're trying to do that math, but I'm sure it's not very much at this point. And every generation there's more and more people who are descendants from people who were impacted by slavery. So it gets worse and worse every generation for them. And this is just like, it's as we've said before, race communism. It's just a deep hatred of one, like white Americans, and two, kind of the American system in general. These same groups, are the ones that are asking for abolition of the Senate, which I see said over and over and over again, even more and more from slightly bigger names in Democrat circles, which is crazy. You would think that someone would put the brakes on this thing and say, these people are nuts, we have to stop them. But the Democrats are so scared of what they've allowed to fester in their party. They're afraid of losing the youth vote, I think, if they don't or if they speak up against these people. But Mamdani is almost certainly one of these Liberation Caucus types, even if he's not outwardly that, in order to maintain his position there. But it's just it's only going to get worse from here. I don't have very much faith that if the DSA gets a major hold in the Democrat Party, worse than they already have, I've said this a couple weeks ago, but I don't see it becoming a situation where like, oh, the Democrats are so crazy now that no one's ever going to vote for them again. What I see, unfortunately, are very squishy people on the right starting to try to appease them in ways. And that's just going to be a disaster. We're just going to get...
No.
What?
No.
I know, that's my feeling exactly. Thank you, Obsession. But that's my biggest fear here. So we really need to find ways to really push back on these people and these ideas, because I think it's going to be very dangerous going forward.
I'll just add a couple of things here. So I'm well aware that Mamdani in New York City has a problem with black voters. Maybe this is a way for him to attract black voters. And I say that, not sarcastically. This is just more grievance, grievance policy stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous and absurd. Evanston, Illinois, where I once lived after I graduated college, it's, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes from where we are right now. They do reparations, so this is not anything that's hasn't been done before. California, they've considered reparations. Some other cities and municipalities have also done this. It's ridiculous, obviously. I mean, how can I be held accountable when my mom wasn't even here until the early 1950s? It's just it's ridiculous on its face. But more grievance, more wealth redistribution, more trying to buy votes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to move us along here because actually we have a cute story to get to in a second here. But you know, our viewers and all the people that like the Heartland Institute and enjoy our content can actually get inflation reparations by being smart with your money to outrun inflation. And one of the ways you can do that is by investing in precious metals. So a lot of people in conservative spaces and emergency prep, all of that stuff will hit you with advertisements for buying precious metals. They're not wrong that they're a good investment, but you want to be careful about where you get them from. At In the Tank, we trust Advisor Metals over all of the other guys, and that's because we know the person running the place. He's the best of the best and a great friend of liberty. Ira Bershatsky is the owner and managing member of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. That is a lot of words, but what they mean for you is that everything Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be factual. So there's no sketchy sales pitch or bait and switch. He's held to the highest ethical standards, and there's full transparency, which is way too lacking elsewhere nowadays. If you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you're planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty or, you know, the DSA taking over your closest major city, if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure them with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. Please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. Go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. And when you talk to Ira, make sure you let him know that we are the ones who sent you. That helps us while you're helping secure your financial future by diversifying with precious metals at Advisor Metals. Look at that. All right.
You know, I love that our audience like enjoys the segue into the ad read. I hope Ira really appreciates it, that it's such a part of the show, that it's a fun part of the show. How is it going to be segued into the ad read? It's fantastic.
Thanks, Jim. It is fun. We really appreciate Advisor Metals. You know, Ira is a fan of the show, watches the show and stuff. So he's one of you guys. And so we really hope that you guys give their company some support if you are looking to diversify your portfolio, which you should. All right. But getting on to China. So this is an amusing story. I think we ought to keep our eye on, especially as it relates to artificial intelligence and the Emerging Issues Center. But the Epoch Times reports FCC bans foreign humanoid robots, power inverters amid China concerns. The Federal Communications Commission has expanded its national security blacklist to include foreign-made advanced robotics and power inverters, effectively shutting Chinese companies out of the U.S. market. If you guys will remember, I think it's the power inverters on the solar panels that China has remote access to. So if you're wondering what the context for this stuff is, that's that. All right. The bans target advanced robotic devices such as mobile robots, humanoids, and quadrupeds. And saying those words out loud is, yeah. Power inverters are devices that convert the direct current generated by solar panels into alternating current, which can be fed to the electrical grid. As for the reason behind the bans, the FCC pointed to unacceptable risks to national security or the safety and security of United States persons. The FCC emphasized that its action will not disrupt consumers' continued use of devices they already acquired. They are not going to steal your Roomba away from you, nor will it prevent retailers from selling, importing, or marketing existing FCC-approved device models. The bans apply only to new devices. The restriction does not impart purchase or use by the federal government at all. But I don't think they're going to be buying Chinese robots anyway, because they have someone else to buy robots from. All right. The determination on the advanced robots said their network capabilities create extensive vulnerabilities and vectors for attack that can manipulate the data and physical operation of the advanced robotics system. Advanced robots collect data that could be leveraged by a malign actor to surveil Americans, enhance the capabilities of foreign intelligence services, or to remotely commandeer the robots. On the inverters, the determination warned of their support for remote connectivity. So basically shutting stuff down remotely. So this actually reminds me of a Jetsonsy looking household robot that was advertised a couple weeks ago that was supposed to be released by a company. I'm guessing that this is probably a Chinese-made robot that's not gonna be allowed in this country. It can basically just fold laundry and put small objects away and kind of tidy up a place at a pace that I would probably describe as agonizingly slow. But it's cute. When I looked deeper into this thing, because I thought, "Oh, are we doing robots now? Like, how household robots besides the Roomba and the wet Roomba or whatever?" Um, I found out that in the FAQ section, the particular robot is not actually automated. Not fully anyway, has the ability to be somewhat automated, but human beings, most likely foreigners in India or Indonesia or somewhere, can take remote control of it, which they advertise as a good thing because it makes the robot do the tasks more effectively, which is crazy because it's like I thought the point of these robots were that they were now so advanced that they can do things by themselves, but it turns out that they're just an ROV basically. They can be controlled remotely, they can be turned on and off remotely, they can be made to do things like, I assume, smothering you in your sleep, all sorts of good stuff like that. Chris, I mean, with the FCC banning this stuff, is this overreach or is this the kind of like rational security-based regulation?
Hmm. I don't know about that. So I personally am probably more anti-robot than other people. I have seen Westworld, and that really scared me. I just I don't know. I mean, so here's there's so many ways for me to go on this. I think obviously robots are the future. I think they can help a ton of manufacturing. I think they could obviously help people with house tasks. Like think of the washing machine. I mean, that, the vacuum cleaner, all those things, they just increase people's living standards. However, the robot is different because if it does have the ability to go rogue, I would not want that anywhere near me. So I am going to be a late adapter, if ever. I actually enjoy doing household chores. I mean, I know probably in the very minority of that, but I actually find it satisfying and fulfilling. So yeah, I actually like cleaning.
Yeah, I like the Jetsons future. Um, little robot butler stuff is really cute and fun to think about. But all the ones that I see, they're always like, this is the most advanced robot ever. And maybe it is, but they're always like so clunky and so slow. And I think it's stupid. This particular robot I'm thinking of, I don't remember the actual company name, but this particular home robot is the kind that I would have wanted to see, like where it's on treads, so it actually can't go upstairs, which is to me a good thing. Like it's on non-stairs um capable treads, because at least then I can run away from it, like I can run away from Ed 209 and RoboCop or something and just trip it up that way. But I kind of like the idea of the little like friendly like humanoid from the waist up ish, but it still looks like a robot. I don't like the Tesla Optimus bots actually, because one, I think it's impressive to be able to make a walking robot, like technically very impressive. But I don't see how that's a better design than just putting it on wheels that can do rough terrain. Like I don't see the benefit other than the cool factor for the walking robot. But I can see people, I haven't seen this yet, but I could see people accusing the FCC and the government of doing this ban in order to protect the viability of Elon selling his Optimus robots.
Well, in all seriousness, I do think that China's a threat to America, and I'm just a little bit concerned about them, stealing our intellectual property and doing all sorts of other bad stuff. So maybe the China ban is a good thing.
I'll just say that here, Chris said, I am more anti-robot than some people. I got to say, that is not a sentence that I thought we'd be stating with all seriousness on this program even a year ago. So that's pretty crazy. in itself. But
sentences spoken by people on Coruscant in Star Wars.
that's right. That's right. This is not, I'm more anti-robot than some people, I like the movie I, Robot. A lot of people don't like it. I think it's actually really good. And it's just kind of coming true, or seems like it's going to be coming true pretty soon. But just the idea that look, if you have a robot that's working in your business or working in your home, I would think just the fact that you own it means that no outside company or country or anybody should be allowed to have access to your property without permission. And the default should be nobody has permission to do that. If you wanted to let the company in to, maybe fix it or something, or if it's to troubleshoot it to see what's going on, that's fine. But just the whole idea that I guess we should have a conversation. Should we be going into a robotic future in which these kinds of questions are not settled, and maybe they need to be settled in law? I don't want China or even the manufacturer of my quadruped robot that perhaps has some firearms on it or something, like an episode of Black Mirror has stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of frightening.
DARPA mule.
Yeah, it's like I don't have an Alexa in my house. I don't have a Ring camera. I guess I shouldn't confess these things, but like I don't have any interest in having a corporation or anybody listening in to every conversation in my house because I have Alexa on, because twice a week I'll ask it to play some music or change the channel or add something to my calendar. Screw that. I don't need that. I also don't need a Ring camera where the company or the corporation can grab whatever my Ring camera films and give it to the police. I don't want to be part. In other words, I don't want to be part of the surveillance state in any way. And if that means I don't get robots, or I don't get Alexa, or I don't get a Ring camera, I'm okay with that. My life doesn't need those things. What it needs is actually freedom. And I want to reduce the amount of people that have access to my life as possible.
I have this weird tension in my personal life. I love, I'm as an engineer and stuff, like I love technology. I love cool devices. I was always trying the like weird little off-brand tablets and stuff when tablets were just coming out in 2009-ish and stuff. I love playing with that stuff. I have a Roomba. I do have a Ring camera, but it's mostly for spying on my chickens and on my front door for when I'm out of town all the time. But I don't like, for one, I'm hyper paranoid about this evil devil rectangle. I hate the surveillance thing. One of the things that I hate more than anything else is the subscription model. As I saw one of our viewers talked about here, where is it? Darren and Loki said, everything is a subscription these days. You do not own anything: video games, music, cars, television. Yeah. And guess what? This robot, this house, like laundry folding robot that I saw, that was neat. The first thing that I looked up to see that it had was remote access. Like that, is there a human being in some other country, or even in this country, I don't care, who is remote accessing this thing in order to steer it around and like make its little arms go and everything? The answer to that was yes. There's a remote access function in order for people to like, help it do its tasks, which ruins the whole point of it, in my opinion. Two, the surveillance issue related to that. And three, it was a subscription service. What do you do? I just recently found out that the Peloton is a subscription. Like I never knew anything about the Peloton. I assumed it was a stationary bike that you can just use even if you don't pay the subscription. But apparently you can't use it if you're not paying the subscription on the bike. What happens if you stop paying the subscription on your stupid in-house robot that's 6 feet tall?
I'm gonna take this back a couple of weeks. Remember when we were talking about the laziness of young people? Maybe this is a little laziness thing about just, I don't want to do it. I want my robot to do it.
Well, to me, it's not.
You know what? A lot of times I don't want to clean, but I do it. And you know what? I always have such a great sense of accomplishment afterwards. So I mean, I know that some people absolutely hate cleaning and doing chores. I find it to be actually beneficial. I find it to be in some ways therapeutic. I think that there are, and I'm not kidding about that. I mean, I think that the act of actually, cleaning your belongings, whatever it's your bed or vacuuming or whatever, you actually do get an endorphin release from that. And I think that people obviously have every right in the world to buy whatever they want and to be as lazy as they want, but I personally would not go down this road.
I think some people it's not so much. I think for some people it's definitely a laziness thing. Other people it's kind of like, I don't know.
Folding the
You
laundry takes
you
literally
see
5
that.
minutes.
Yeah, I know, but that's 5 minutes. Well, it depends on how many clothes you have, Chris. 5 minutes that 5 minutes that you could be using doing something else. Although most people utterly waste that time. They use that extra 5 minutes to like scroll on their
To
phone or
doom
something.
scroll, right?
But what I'm thinking when I'm thinking about these like robot future settings and stuff is more like Tony Stark. Here's the little arm robot that has a little bit of AI plugged into it that's gonna like grab something for you and like do all those
Okay.
like fun little helper robot. Not, I have the smart house that malfunctions and locks you in and tries to kill you type of.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
Yeah, you never go full tech dependent. You turn it off every once in a while. I'm reminded of there's a Ray Bradbury short story called The Veldt, where there's like an kind of like a augmented reality playroom or whatever for the kids, where you send like the kids have like all the walls are projector screens kind of where they can see different settings and whatever they imagine can go up on these walls, and the kids become like addicted to this playroom because they can have fantasy universe or whatever, and the kids eventually have like disturbed minds for some reason, and so they make like the African savannah and they stick it on that, and eventually people get for real eaten by lions because this is science fiction. But it's a good example of like what too much automation can do to your brain and hurt you. But I am going to move us on to our COVID talk because I know that this is going to take us 600 years to get through. Not because it's tedious, but because we are all too angry still and excited by this topic. So Fauci is feeling the ouchie. RFK Jr. announced this week that health officials found private diary entries from Dr. Fauci, which were recorded from December 2019, interesting, to December 2022. Kennedy said it took 8 months to gather it all from 11 separate computer servers. Senator Rand Paul released the documents that were compiled. So these diary entries are crazy. They give you an insight into Fauci's mind that we all pretty much knew based on the way that he talked in interviews and stuff that this is the kind of guy that he was. But it's kind of like pathetic. Sad, when you read it, actually, this is a guy whose entire sense of self-worth is based on what other people think of him and what like honors and stuff that he's given. And he's been given a lot of honors, going back decades. And so just kind of like getting a glimpse into his psyche has been one of the weirder parts of this. There's one diary entry. I think we have there it is. A bit from 2013, so a few years before the pandemic stuff started, but HHS turned me down on requests from CNN's Wolf Blitzer and Soledad O'Brien. I asked John Burklove to call up Bill Hall and ask what the heck is going on and what's the reason for all of this. John told me that the CDC complained to Bill Hall and HHS that I was getting all of the publicity on an issue, influenza tracking, that they considered was their issue. I don't know who at CDC did this. It could be anyone. From blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah. In any event, it has nothing to do with my use of the word epidemic on Wolf Blitzer's show and everything to do with pure jealousy that I am a rock star stealing their thunder. Shame on the CDC. Okay, listen, buddy. Yeah, this guy's got issues. Let's say that. I'm not going to try to do the accent because it would come out extremely offensive, me trying to do it. But another thing that's a little bit more important, though, coming to the modern COVID issue is that there was a huge difference. And we all knew this again. Like, none of this is surprising to people who are paying attention. But the difference between what he was telling the president and the public and what he actually thought privately and what he was writing in his diaries is the gulf is immense. So, for example, in February of 2020, he was telling us on television that the virus came from a wet market, from like pangolins or bat soup or whatever. But in private, he was writing that scientists he worked with and himself to a certain extent thought it was very possible that the virus was manufactured or edited, at least in part. He was involved in suppressing the doubts of other scientists he worked with regards to the virus's origin in that paper that they published. A lot of scientists did not like the way the paper was written, and they thought that they were downplaying the possibility of it being lab originated, and he shut them down. He shut other scientists up and pressured them to keep their mouths shut. So anyway, that's just one example. There are a lot of these. He was hauled in front of the Senate this week over the corruption issue. The Epoch Times reports Fauci invokes the Fifth Amendment more than 100 times during Senate COVID hearing. Fauci repeated more than 100 times in response to questions that he would not answer them pursuant to the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, and Fauci received a preemptive pardon in 2025. Federal law makes it a crime for a person who is subpoenaed by Congress to refuse to answer any question pertinent to the question under inquiry and to, in certain situations, withhold information from Congress. Fauci, who is appearing pursuant to a subpoena issued by the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, could face misdemeanor or felony charges. Senator Rand Paul, the chairman of the committee, told reporters after the hearing that the committee would next week vote on whether to recommend charges against Fauci for contempt of Congress. Now, I kind of didn't want this whole segment to just be rage bait for Jim, but it's going to be all rage bait for Jim. Man, I am tired of these hearings where it just seems like bombshells are coming out, or they're trying to get them out. And they're just like clip generating for television, but nothing else comes of it. I think I speak for a lot of Americans when I say that I just want to see someone of consequence go to prison. Fauci has a blanket pardon for his crimes. I get it. And I don't mean to sound petulant, but it does seem unfair. Jim, you are muted. You are still muted, Jim.
Yes, I'm sorry. We muted my microphone. I pulled a Jim, but it's not my fault. We're having audio problems with my microphone, apparently. But as I was just saying, Linnea, you're right. We are never going to get justice here. The best we're going to get is the humiliation of Anthony Fauci, and the diary is a humiliation. We can add on to the hearing, which is now preserved for posterity, and that's even more humiliating. That was humiliating yesterday. I watched the whole thing. I had it on the background as I was working, and sometimes I would look over at the video and see Anthony Fauci hanging his head in shame. He was extremely uncomfortable. He had to sit there and take it, and he invoked the Fifth Amendment no fewer than 111 times. It could have been 120. I think even the people trying to keep count lost count. But that's the only satisfaction that we're going to get. That, and maybe he's so embarrassed about what happened on Wednesday that, or scared maybe to say anything, that even his ego is not enough, that he's going to have to decline future invitations to TV so we don't have to see him and listen to that annoying voice anymore. Fauci deserves jail. The least reason is because he hasn't displayed a scintilla of regret or remorse for what his arrogance, ignorance, lies, and narcissism put this country and much of the world through. He will never see the inside of a jail cell. I am sorry to say, it was very disappointing, but that, I think, is 100% positive. He probably won't even ever appear in court to face a criminal charge. But, this is what he did. He made sure that the Wuhan lab was secretly funded. He wanted dangerous research on viruses to occur in a Chinese facility without any proper security measures, or at least not enough. His diary said so, that's what he wanted. And he considered anyone who didn't agree with him and his views on anything to be a moron. Nobody in the world was smart enough to defy Anthony Fauci's wishes. He is science, after all. But Fauci's policies, and none of them, not a one, was rational or sound, killed people. It destroyed families. It destroyed businesses. It destroyed kids' educations. It ended promising military and medical careers. It stole the civil liberties of every American citizen. It robbed them of their free speech rights. This channel started getting demonetized and in trouble because we were talking about these things the way we're talking about them today 5 years ago. And we got in big trouble for that. It robbed Americans of their right to worship and peaceably assemble. Unless you're attending a BLM march or you're a friend of Gavin Newsom and get to go to the French Laundry restaurant with him. It forced the elderly to die alone or with strangers. It robbed families from conducting proper funerals. Now, there were exceptions. If you were George Floyd or Congressman John Lewis, then you got a proper funeral. It robbed high school students of graduation and prom and football games and homecoming and countless of other rituals that are all part of growing up and a very important part of growing up. All of it was taken away, and you can never get any of that back, all because falsely, and it was very obvious early on that none of these measures that Anthony Fauci advocated for and insisted must be done to save lives, none of that helped stop the spread. Basically, everybody got COVID. Fauci's lies wasted trillions of dollars. It destroyed trust in public health institutions. It made domestic violence and mental health problems spike. It turned many Americans into snitches, reporting the unmasked or telling the authorities to bust up a family gathering that I think has too many people in it. It introduced a slew of little micro humiliations that we all had to experience and you could not avoid, like going only one way up a grocery aisle, or having your temperature taken at the gym by a kid shooting a laser gun at your forehead, or standing on a sticker and have to stay there, or and then on then the next sticker, or showing your Vax card to get into a restaurant, or wearing your mask at the table but then taking it off once you sat down, or if you had to go to the bathroom, you had to put it back on. Being masked on planes, stifling, and even crying 2-year-olds. You have to wear a mask too because Anthony Fauci said so. I even had to play a 2-hour league tennis match wearing a freaking mask. Boy, that's a lot of fun. Fauci's policies, all of these, were not backed by any real science. They were mostly just made up. He later pretty much admitted that. And all of these measures that Anthony Fauci put upon the world reduced human beings into sacks of disease. At least those human beings. Not him, though. No. He got to retain his humanity. The COVID disaster, and let's recognize it as a devastating man-caused global disaster. And none of us alive had ever experienced anything like that before. And I hope to God we never experience it again. That disaster made Tony Fauci famous and rich. He got to be friends with celebrities like Julia Roberts, who he said in his diary sent him flowers. Every day we suffered from his lockdowns and the mass paranoia and the mass psychosis. Every time it spread further was a banner day for Tony Fauci. Every diary entry, which is what really triggered me this week, reading a lot of that diary, has a list of those reported at the top who are dead or infected from COVID, followed immediately by him writing about the insults to from his enemies. And his enemies are anybody who questioned the word of the great Anthony Fauci, the word of science itself. And then after that, he calms down a little bit and then he expresses how absolutely pleased he is with all the big legacy media outlets doing one glowing profile after another, or the celebrities he met, or the awards he won, and the applause he received everywhere he went. He went on and on and on about this in the tone of a boy-crazy 13-year-old girl. So, COVID was terrible for everybody, but it was not a total loss for Anthony Fauci. The lockdowns ended up changing our election system, so they were able to prevent Trump from winning in 2020, but that made Fauci and the media and the Democratic Party very happy until the diary was released and until yesterday's hearing. That is not enough accountability. It's not nearly enough punishment, not nearly enough, but it's all we're going to get. So be satisfied.
No strong feelings on this podcast.
Not at all.
All right. Chris, I don't know if you want to jump in here right away. But
yeah, I mean, following that monologue.
Yeah,
whoa,
what am I supposed to do?
I mean, here we go.
I guess
okay.
we're on the show here.
So, I mean, I've been watching the coverage of this, and I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. So one of the things that stood out to me of the diary entries was he was not at all concerned with what was happening. There was no, oh my gosh, this is just killing me. There was none of that. It was almost all like celebratory, like this is all good. This is helping me. I'm making money. I'm becoming famous. Jim went through all that stuff. I mean, that is really that's sick and twisted. That's evil, because he should have been most concerned with all the people that were dying, all the people that were, suffering from his crazy stupid experiment. The Eco Health Alliance, Peter Daszak, all that stuff, we've been through that again and again and again. It's all true. Anthony Fauci believed that it was a good idea to do genetic experiments on these crazy COVID viruses in a Wuhan lab, and it escaped, and it ruined people's lives. We'll never get that time back. It's still so frustrating just looking back and remembering how people like Anthony Fauci and Birx and others came before the American people and were so positive that everything they were saying was dead on right. There was no there was no humility. There was no, hey, we think this about a novel virus, but we're not sure. So I think a lot of that stuff is still just irking the American people. In terms of any sort of punishment, no, he won't face a punishment because he has a get out of jail free card from Biden going back to 2014. However, I believe in karma. I believe that Anthony Fauci deep down has to know that what he did was sick and disgusting, and he has to live with that. He has to look himself in the mirror, and maybe in some other afterlife, that he will have to deal with these consequences, because no one gets away with what he did scot-free. It's impossible. There's no way.
Yeah, let's pull up the band video with the green tents just to remind the audience. Everyone's favorite sport is listing all the crazy things they remember from COVID. This is a good one. Yeah, that's just a PNG. I thought it was a video. Okay. We will also, let's bring up the lockdown lies montage here.
Recommend locking anything down. And the record will show, Neil, that we didn't recommend shutting everything down. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. And that was a very difficult decision because I knew it would have serious economic consequences, which it did.
This is one of the things that is so irritating to me and triggering me. I swear to God, I'm not going to go on another 10-minute rant. I promise you that. As much as the audience might like it. But the one of the many frustrating things about Anthony Fauci taking the fifth, and once you take first of all, if you take the fifth, you're not supposed to be able to have an opening statement. Once you open your mouth to address the hearing in any substantive way, the fifth is gone. You don't just get to pick and choose. It's not a buffet. You plead the fifth, you don't talk at all. But what was so frustrating about that is that he keeps trying to push out this idea that it wasn't me, man. I didn't tell anybody to lock anything down. I don't make those decisions. He bragged in his diary about convincing then Mayor Bill de Blasio to shut down all the schools in New York City. And then in the next sentence, he bragged about convincing the governor of California to shut down all the schools in the state of California. So, and then you can see from those clips that, he tries to have it both ways. And he tries to deny what he did. And then, obviously he has to admit it because he couldn't keep himself off TV. My God, if he wasn't on TV 10 times a day, he was pissed off about it. He wanted to be on 20 times a day. It was absurd. The man is a absolute psychopathic narcissist.
Laura Ingraham was actually at the hearing yesterday.
I saw that.
Yeah, and I watched Laura Ingram's TV show last night, and she had Stephen Miller on, and I thought that was a really interesting guest because Stephen Miller was there during the in the Trump administration during the COVID-19 pandemic, and when Laura was kind of saying Trump didn't do enough of a job pushing back against Fauci, Stephen Miller came out and said, actually, yes, he did, because Fauci wanted to go even way further in terms of shutdowns, in terms of all sorts of stuff. And I was just trying to think back, like, Yeah, that is kind of true. Because remember, we were told, we had 2 weeks to slow the spread or stop the spread or whatever, and that was the initial thing. And then after that is when President Trump did start to say, like, okay, enough of this, enough of this. That's when Linnea, my brother, lived in Georgia. In Georgia, they said we're not going along with this stuff. And I remember all that, like all those early uh, I guess, arguments. And Dr. Fauci is trying to play revisionist history. He's trying to make it seem as if I never said any of that stuff. I never was in favor of lockdowns. I was never in favor of shutting down schools, when absolutely, yes, he was. We know that from not only the diary, but from emails that have gone back and forth. We know that he was trying to pressure the teachers unions and others, CDC, all sorts of stuff, in order to go along to get along. And here we are 5-6 years later, and we are still reaping the consequences of this. And those consequences will be felt probably forever.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that, as you guys pointed out already, that the I don't know, indictments of Fauci's character is that he has absolutely no visible shame whatsoever, with being a two-faced liar.
It's
And
not even the shame,
he
but
might
Linnea,
he might actually have some shame. He might actually have
but then why
some
wasn't he
kind of
expressing it in
shame.
his diary? Like during those really dark
If I
days,
could
you would think he
finish.
would unburden himself and say, God, I feel terrible. I'm under so much pressure. I've got all these people. Those thoughts did not enter his mind. I mean, I don't keep a diary. I'm not a 13-year-old girl, so I'm sorry I can't, talk about this kind of stuff. But it would never occur to me, when something so tragic is happening, to try to always find, like, oh, but how am I benefiting from this? I'm making money. I'm getting, famous. I'm all over CNN. I'm, hanging out with Julia Roberts, all this kind of stuff. Hey, that's not what that's not what this is about. This is not about you. This is about the American people going through a horrible time period that was made extra horrible because you lied to us about it. And I'll never forget that or forgive that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he would ever feel any natural shame in the conditions that he has been in with all of his media tours. What I was trying to say is that he might have felt something kind of like forced shame on him if the media did their job and gave any pushback or any criticism whatsoever, instead of just, I mean, you guys saw the drop at the beginning of the show. Unless you guys came in later, Jim picked a one that I actually hadn't seen at the time that it came out. So this was brand new cringe to me. A little music video that people made praising Fauci back in the day. And I saw a lot of them. I saw the Mr. Sandman one, which still haunts my dreams. Ironically enough, but he was.
I saw that. I can go find it. Let me try to find it while you talk.
Please. Man, maybe we'll close the show on it. It hurts me so bad.
But as Jim alluded to, and I think this is so important, this is what this is all about. This didn't happen in a vacuum. This happened under political context. In late 2019/early 2020, I remember vividly, the economy was great. It looked like Donald Trump was going to get reelected pretty easily. And what happened? This thing happened in China, and Dr. Fauci, and I strongly believe this, and there's a ton of evidence that leads to this conclusion, said we're going to use that in order to prevent Donald Trump from being reelected, and we're going to try to make this as painful as possible for the American people. We're not going to try to make this as smooth as possible for them. We're going to go very draconian. That's what he did. And that the collateral damage that did, the amount of people that committed suicide, the mental health anguish, all sorts of stuff, eating disorders, we can't even begin to fathom that. He's responsible for that, but he doesn't care. And that's what makes me the most mad. That's what I'm so angry about, is that he ruined people's lives and he just doesn't care.
Yeah, we have there are a lot of other people who are
I
also...
mean, come on.
No, he doesn't. His conscience comes from the outside. So if people were to hold him to account from his own friends in the media and stuff, if people were to say, hey, you screwed us over, you destroyed our lives the last couple of years, I think then he would feel something. It's not, I don't mean to psychoanalyze someone from a distance, but I'm going to do it. It's not like he feels it the way that, I would feel it if I lied and then even if I didn't get caught, would just like it would keep me up at night, you know. But he when he gets caught, he tries to backpedal so that he can try to reframe it so that it wasn't really a lie, it was a part, but it does, and that works for fooling yourself. But I think if he had been slapped around by the media at all, like if Colbert, instead of writing a song homage to him, had, you know, put him in the hot seat and been like, hey, look, they filled in a skate park in Los Angeles. Isn't this ridiculous? You know, here, and made fun of him on live television. I think he would have felt something like shame, more like embarrassment, or like, I want this to stop kind of a feeling. Nothing, this guy's a psychopath, though. I really think so. Based in his diary entries definitely show it. I recommend, if you guys have the tolerance for your stress levels spiking through the roof and you're not going to like have a heart attack and die, go read these diary entries, because every single one of them is just me. You know, what all the stuff that I you know, got to do. Oh, I'm, you know, meeting celebrities. Oh, they made this song for me. Oh, I'm being awarded this award. Like all this stuff. And that was his primary interest, his primary concern, while this stuff is going on, while you're like not being allowed to be with your grandparents while they pass away, while you've got, you know, doctors at hospitals putting people on ventilators when they shouldn't be putting them on ventilators because it's the federal approved method or whatever. Just like all this awful crime against humanity level stuff.
But as a doctor, he has to take the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm.
Yeah,
he violated that, and he knowingly violated it. That's why I can't get off the like the moral / ethical side of this, because we've all, okay, first of all, we're all humans, we're all fallible, you know, we commit sins, obviously. But when I commit a sin that I know is wrong, I mean, I do have that you know, internal conversation about like, no, this is wrong. Apparently Dr. Fauci just never even had that conversation.
What does an oath mean to someone who doesn't believe in being held accountable to an oath? You know, like if you put your hand on a Bible and swear that you're not going to lie on the stand, but you don't believe in God and you don't even believe in honor in that way, then why wouldn't you lie? I mean, it's just, he's just a creep. I don't know what else to say.
Well, you know, you mentioned the media's culpability in all of this, and that should definitely be highlighted. I mean, if somebody in the media had just pushed back a little bit on Anthony Fauci, you know, reading his diaries, you know that there was literally nothing more. And this goes back from way before COVID, because these diary entries go back to the early 2000s, or at least around 2008, 2009, all the way through the pandemic. But he was obsessed with positive media coverage for his entire career. Going back, I said a bad word, sorry. Going all the way back to the AIDS. You know, he was in his position when AIDS first appeared on the scene in the 80s, and he made a ton of mistakes born out of arrogance back then too. But he was obsessed with being on the media, being on media all the time. For, you know, the previous entry that we read was actually about a flu, you know, a pretty particularly maybe bad flu season. And he was upset. He was happy to be on all these news programs. And then he realized, as is the case with most media, they cycle through and by next week they're on to something else and they don't care about the flu anymore. And he was very sad and disappointed that he wasn't getting called to be on Meet the Press anymore because the flu had started to subside. But instead of that, the media, they didn't just not criticize him. They lifted him up and up and up as some sort of, you know, God king of science. And obviously he was not qualified for that. Who is qualified for that? But if they had, and so you couldn't question him. And it got even worse. The media would encourage the silencing. The media, which is protected by the First Amendment, advocated openly and often to take away the First Amendment's free speech rights of other Americans who disagree with Anthony Fauci and thus with them. We actually have a clip here, this kind of from Chuck Todd, who doesn't have a TV show anymore because he stinks. There's a clip of him. This is very indicative. This is very exemplary of that kind of attitude from the press.
vaccinated. If you know someone who's not vaccinated, find a way to convince them to get vaccinated. Literally, the only people dying are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you. Shame on you. People are needlessly dying because of your misinformation. Think about it. I don't know how some of you sleep at night who are doing this for a living on television.
I don't believe you.
Yes, that's great. I love that drop. It's perfect. It's perfect because actually you're the one spreading the disinformation there, Chuck Todd. It's not only people that are unvaccinated or are dying of COVID. That wasn't true in July. I think that was 2021. It wasn't true ever. Ever was that true. And Anthony Fauci told everyone, and Joe Biden told everyone, if you get the vaccine, you won't get the disease. Rachel Maddow, all of these media people, instead of questioning, actually talking to doctors like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who has been on a Heartland Institute program, spoke at our benefit dinner 2 years ago. Wonderful, wonderful man, very smart. They were saying things that they were following the actual science and telling you that, like, yes, these are not actual vaccines. They are biologic treatments, which is not it's not exactly precisely a vaccine. But they told us that if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. That was incorrect and actually known very early. If you get the COVID vaccine, you won't spread COVID to others. That was also false. And so screw you, Chuck Todd, and everybody else in the media, because the hell that we went through for years would not have been possible if it wasn't for the unanimous applause and promoting of lies of Anthony Fauci by all of the legacy media.
I'm going to go back to bashing Anthony personally for a little bit because I've got some more of that to do. So okay. Scott Atlas was also on Laura Ingram's TV show last night, and he had another angle that I found very interesting. The millions upon millions of dollars that Anthony Fauci made during this period. And Scott Atlas actually thinks that one of these things is illegal because Dr. Fauci, and this is all in the diaries and in the emails, and because it was on his government computers, was tasking people at the NIAID to go and apply for him on behalf of prizes. One of them was $1 million prize that he did receive. So during the heyday, the hellishness of the early pandemic, where was Dr. Fauci? Where was he, thinking, how can I financially benefit from this? So how can I get power? How can I get fame? And how can I get money? That's what Dr. Anthony Fauci, those were his three primary concerns during the pandemic. It was not about how can I be the best scientist? How can I make sure that we don't unduly burden people that are not actually in danger from this virus? It was not about that. And Dr. Anthony Fauci is going to be a villain. And, eventually I think that the history will be right on him and he will go down as a villain, as he should.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, I think the best the best thing to do would be to withdraw some of the official awards that he got in the past. And if the president has the ability to do that, if he has any presidential type awards that can be withdrawn, and also to if you just simply spelled his name wrong by one letter on every document that you talk about him in for the rest of history, I think it would be justice based on his priorities. All right, let's play this Holly clip from the hearings this week.
Silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards, but now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time, I don't know. But what I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary.
Jim, did you see the part where I don't remember who it was. It might have been the Ohio Senator Moreno asked Anthony Fauci to turn around because there was like maybe 20 Americans who suffered from from his policies. He refused to turn around. He literally refused to. That goes to show that he doesn't care.
Well, I would say that I'm willing to take Josh Hawley on as an apprentice in the rant department. I thought that was very good. I'd give it an 8.3 out of 10, but he can definitely do better. And the look on Anthony Fauci's face. So, like I said, this is the only justice we're going to get. He's not going to be facing any more. I would be extremely surprised if there were any legal ramifications or even social ramifications after this. Yesterday's humiliation ritual is the best we're going to get. And he looked crestfallen, irritated, sad. I don't revel in the suffering of others. That is evil. But it was hard not to think, well, you deserve that. You deserve actually worse, Anthony Fauci, but you're going to have to sit there for 3 hours and listen to people like Josh Hawley and Senator Moreno out of Ohio tell you the truth that you've tried to deny for 6 years.
Hawley got it right on the mark at the end there, where he said that Fauci probably set back, trust in the scientific establishment or any science at all by a significant degree. I know people who have completely thrown out any rational approach to like medicine or food, all sorts of stuff, just because they're like, well, I've been lied to by COVID, about the COVID stuff. We were lied to about, what was going on with all of that. So why would I trust anything that comes out of it? And it's good to be skeptical. It's good to be careful, but there are a lot of people who took it way too far, and it's damaged the ability for people to trust science. And I think, to a certain extent, rationally, because they did lie, and they do lie all the time. They do it either because they're megalomaniacs, like in the case of Dr. Fauci. They're trying to protect a geopolitical ally like China. So they lie about, the origins of the virus. They want to protect their gain of function laboratories so that they can keep doing these disgusting experiments and work where they are attempting to create superbugs, in order to just study them and make sure that, we're the ones creating the superbugs, so that if someone else makes a superbug, we can figure out how to deal with it. I'm
playing God, I think, in some ways.
I'm sympathetic to that argument. However, your bug got out and everybody knows it. So it's very troubling. It's going to take a lot of work over a very long period of time to reestablish any trust whatsoever in anyone who puts a lab coat on.
Linnea, I commend you for bringing that up, because I didn't even I think that is what this is really all about. Because I have been in the United States for 40 something years, and I like most Americans trusted the CDC, the FDA, and most of those institutions. They weren't political. They were not the CIA. They were not the IRS. They were just the science and the medicine and the health experts. And that all changed when Anthony Fauci got up and lied through his teeth for 18 months about COVID-19. And I haven't regained full trust in those institutions yet, and I bet a lot of Americans haven't either, and that's not good for the long term.
No, heck, between that and the land acknowledgement stuff at medical school graduation ceremonies, I have a hard time trusting doctors in general. If they look like they're younger than, 50 years old, I don't think I could go to them at this
And as
point.
Jim mentioned, you knew it was political from the very beginning, because that also happened right when the George Floyd stuff happened. And the CDC came out and said, if you go and protest for a social justice cause, that's okay. I mean, I don't remember verbatim, but they were like literally like, you're not in danger of getting COVID. But if you go, but if you do anything else, you'll get COVID.
CDC, I believe it was, where some federal agency said racism is a public health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Systemic racism is a public health issue. And so, no, I don't trust the CDC. I don't trust so-called public health experts, be they my local county public health expert or somebody else. And that is a logical and rational and justified position to have for here and probably for the rest of my life, because they chose to lie. They chose to politicize their offices for the political advantage of Democrats, to get Trump out of office, to ruin the economy, and to rule over us like subjects, not citizens. Those were the choices Anthony Fauci and Rachel Walensky and so many others made. They made those active choices. And now the result is people have a rational distrust of public health officials. And frankly, what this should really show you is that, were they ever really trustworthy at all? It's kind of revealing. And you would like to think that they were at one time and they aren't now. And maybe they are now. Maybe it's fixed, but it's too late. It's too late. You can't undo what you put us through for 6 years.
Yeah, them changing the definitions of words live on their website, like the definition of the word vaccine, or as to whether or not masks work for prevention of getting a virus instead of just using them so you don't sneeze, droplets on people, kind of thing. All of that stuff changed as it came up in the media. It was almost as if the second that a conservative pointed out, hey, the CDC actually says this, so we probably shouldn't be wasting our time on this other stuff, the CDC would change their guidelines on the website. It's like I said, we were at the beginning of the show before we went live, we were talking about all the crazy, anti-COVID measures that were being taken, the stories that we've all heard, the experiences that we all had with family members. A lot of us got pushed out of our careers if we refused to get the vaccine. That's unforgivable. And they'll look you in the eye and say, well, the government didn't mandate that companies, fire you for not getting the vaccine, or subtly lay you off, as in, in my case, they won't give you jobs anymore. They'll just have you sitting at home collecting the base pay, and they won't give you the jobs where you actually make your real money in industrial jobs if you didn't get the vaccine. And so it was you were half fired and until you quit. And that was the goal.
And the federal government gave those pharmaceutical companies immunity over those products. So the federal government did have a hand in this.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Anthony Fauci went out of his way to not allow people to pursue alternative treatments, ivermectin or others, shows that I think that really shows that he wanted people to die from it, because he had to have known, based on all the data, that those treatments worked. But he said, no, I will prevent you from even trying to have that treatment, because you're gonna go the course of treatment that I am gonna mandate you. I think that is evil.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we have people in the comments saying that they had to get the vaccine in order to get a quadruple bypass. All sorts of stuff. You couldn't go into a hospital to visit someone unless you were vaccinated, even though the vaccine didn't prevent spread or transmission or anything. Just crazy stuff.
And the myocarditis,
Yeah.
Anthony Fauci suffered from myocarditis, and we now know because of the Dear Diary entries that he did. But how come he didn't tell us about that? And how come he went out of his way to say, no, there is no connection between potential heart problems, especially among young athletes, young male athletes, and the vaccine, which we now know, according to VAERS, the verification database, that is and was a problem.
Yeah, and if you lived in like a major city or something, you couldn't, like Chris says here, you couldn't participate. It wasn't mandated, but you just couldn't participate in society unless you were jabbed. Luckily, where I lived at the time in South Louisiana, they didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, I was still going to bars and stuff with my friends in the like peak pandemic, and when the vaccine was going around, and I was hearing about friends in Chicago who had to show their vaccine card in order to enter a restaurant or something.
Yeah.
We didn't have any of that stuff. And every time I would travel out of Louisiana to go visit family in Chicago or somewhere else, it was like going to the Soviet Union. It was like all the color is desaturated. It was like going to a different country behind the Iron Curtain or something every time you travel outside of your little like bubble of an area, if you lived in an area that didn't enforce any of that crap.
And you know what, just kind of just showing how expansive this all was. So the Chicago public school system today is going to be voting on its latest budget. It's turned $285 million in debt. Guess what it was using all these years to plug that hole? COVID funds. Those have finally run out. Now they have a $285 million deficit. They are going to probably lay off 1,600 teachers, and they're going to try to borrow something like $70 million between now and August 31st, because if they don't do that, guess what? They're only going to make payroll in September. That is how crazy this stuff was. The billions of dollars of fraud. We haven't even touched that yet. There was a woman who was arrested in the Caribbean who somehow got $31 million in COVID PPP payments. So there was not only the shutdown, but then there was also the trillions of dollars and the American Rescue Plan, all this stuff that, that harmed us economically, culturally as well. So, I mean, yeah, we could go, I think, probably on a 6-7 hour, podcast here talking about how much
I know,
because the more I'm like back into those years, the more I'm just
well,
yeah,
maybe we can I definitely want to play that song, so now I have it in my head, so we're going to do that at the end of the segment maybe. But it just reminded me, we talk a lot, we try to talk a lot on this program, we're trying to fight socialism, and we talk a lot about how Gen Z Zoomers are at least Marxist curious and socialist and commie curious at this time. And then you remember that as they were coming into full adulthood, COVID, we purposely crashed our economy. And then when Biden was elected, we super inflated our way out of it. And so they got, you can't shut down an economy and then inject all the cash in it to jumpstart it again. That's not how economics works. And so it was really the worst of both worlds. If you wanted to make a bad economy exist, that's exactly how you would do it. And so the Zoomers now are coming into, adulthood in an economy that's been wrecked by the decisions of people like Anthony Fauci, who was really leading the way. I know he seems like a scapegoat right now, but I think it's actually proper, because if he was an honest scientist and bureaucrat and did not crush dissent and did not, ruthlessly enforce obedience to his particular statement that day, we would not be in this position today. The economy wouldn't be in this position today. And a whole generation of people, Gen Z, would have a much better outlook on the future. But the result of that is now they're commie curious because they see no hope.
The economic shutdown, just for a little couple anecdotes here. So at the apartment complex that I live, they could not do any of the new development construction that they wanted to do in terms of renovation. So they basically lost 2 years of their, economic plan. My brother works at a golf course. Same thing. They lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because people weren't coming to play golf and stay at the hotel. They are still, in the drudges of that. All these years later, the golf course and hotel are still suffering, and the apartment complex that I live in is still having to deal with, the missed opportunities from those 2 years that they couldn't do. So The economic damage is going to be with us for a very long time. The housing starts that were not begun because of the lack of construction materials and people willing to work. I mean, think about all the things, like think of all the inventions and entrepreneurship that could have happened during those 2 years. I mean, it's so sad.
Yeah. Well, and also we were talking a little bit before the show about how like there's a genuine almost global civilizational trauma over it, except for maybe in countries that, didn't really have the infrastructure and stuff to shut down and whatever in the first place. But for the West, it was absolutely trauma inducing. There were some people who enjoyed COVID, I think, genuinely. Those were the people who are, kind of have antisocial personalities anyway. They're like the types that are little tyrants who are really enjoying the, government sponsored moral high ground that they were given to. And, I was talking about how people were calling the cops on their neighbors for having a car they didn't recognize in their driveway and stuff like that. Just, there are a lot of people who are permanently messed up from this thing. We'll see if we can move forward from it. But we could talk about this forever and ever. I'm going to move us into our last conversation here, just because actually this also connects to our main topic anyway, so we can keep talking about this as we talk about this next one. But for our USA at 250 segment today, I really wanted to make sure that I tied it to the main news of the show. And if you are like me and you read a lot of contemporary historical nonfiction and fiction, you will know that disease was a major threat during the Revolutionary War, as it was during pretty much every ground war ever, including today, probably. But I think the last major ones were probably World War I, World War II, and Vietnam and like Korea that had, just mostly because for the latter with, like swamp conditions and stuff. But anyway, it was swamp conditions for the Revolutionary War as well. In the 18th century, they actually did have fairly good, better than most people realize, understanding of how disease was spread, even if they didn't have a full grasp of microbiology or bacteria or viruses or anything like that. One of the most common sicknesses in camp was dysentery. If you played the Oregon Trail, you know what that is. And camp fever, which was typhus. They knew that dirty water was a major driver of these illnesses. There are tons of letters discussing as much. Most camps had strict sanitation and isolation protocols when they could enforce them, which is not always so easy, especially at the beginning of the war when volunteer fighters were coming and going all the time. About 17,000 American troops died of disease during the Revolutionary War. You know how many died from actually being killed in battle? 6,800 about. So more than 2 times as many people died of disease during the Revolutionary War on our side as were actually killed in battle. Smallpox was the deadliest and most worrisome of all the diseases that they dealt with. And Washington himself was constantly worried about it. So how back then did they handle a disease as virulent as smallpox? Inoculations, it turns out, with live virus. Getting the illness in a mild form intentionally in order to make you immune from future infection. So at first, Washington didn't want to do it because even though he knew it would work, because he had previously had smallpox and recovered from it and therefore was immune from it, doing it in their context, in the context of a camp, it's harder to control, could potentially put a lot of soldiers out of commission when they were needed. But by early 1777, he really had no choice. They were dropping like flies, really. And so this is actually what Washington did, is the first mandatory smallpox inoculation of military forces in history. This is the first time a military leader said, we are all going to become immune to this particular disease. So all troops were gradually inoculated by rotating their divisions through. And that's, the way that they did the inoculation was by an infected fluid. You can look up exactly what that fluid was on your own. I'm not going to say it. It's gross. And they would rub it into a cut that they would make on the upper arm. So after a week or so, the soldier would come down with smallpox, and then he'd be in a quarantine hospital tent. And once he recovered, he was immune for life. So fancy that. We might call this mandated herd immunity. And it worked. shock of all shocks, the thing that we all know worked. New recruits were immediately given the inoculation procedure, and soon, while smallpox would still break out among some, the bulk of the Continental Army was immune to it and could keep fighting, but the British were still highly susceptible for it. So something that had been benefiting the British in the beginning of the war was turning on them. So I think this whole situation reminds me that, we don't give our immediate ancestors enough credit, right? Every time I read something like this, or when I read, the works of Marco Polo or something, I'm reminded that we are not smarter than them. We're really not. We have knowledge that, like book knowledge that's been built on previous generations' discoveries and stuff. But our ancestors weren't just like blindly rolling around in the mud, like the movies will kind of make you think. I mean, they didn't have modern chemical, dental hygiene or something, but they did clean their teeth with like a tooth cloth. And they knew that a rotting tooth was a danger to your health. They knew that it would make it more likely for you to suddenly die of heart attack and stuff like that, and so they would yank that sucker. It was kind of it's kind of a crazy thing to think about. Very Wild West kind of medical care that they had back then, but they did their best. They knew that quarantine worked. There was that post on X, or that account on X, 1776 Live, posted just a couple days ago that I think Boston had a mandated quarantine for people with smallpox. And what you would do is you would stay in your house. You'd put a little like red ribbon on your door frame or something to let people know that there were sick people inside, like they did during the plague. And then you would self-isolate or whatever. And I was reading about this and I thought, this is I mean, this is identical, but the difference is that we have been convinced by our health establishments that things like herd immunity doesn't work, even though Sweden did it and it did work for them when it came to COVID. Just impressive history. I think the first ever, I don't have this data in front of me here, but I think the very first ever like official medical research center was started in the like late 1790s or something, because they started the Marine Field Hospital and research facility. So it's just a lot of this history begins a lot further back than any of us would naturally guess.
One of the things, I studied the Revolutionary War a lot because it's just such an interesting time period, as you laid out early on in the war, before Washington really took charge and organized the army, when they were still just state militias fighting together. They didn't even build proper trenches, and they were going to the bathroom in the river water right behind their camp. So that was a huge problem. And one of the things that Washington did was he said, we need to make sure that we have order in the camp. We need to make sure that latrines are built and all that kind of stuff. And that in and of itself probably saved the Continental Army at the very early times when they could have been destroyed by the British. So thank God that Washington was there, and other people were aware of the problems of these diseases back then, and the army did not succumb to it, because we'd be living in a very different world.
Yeah, the smallpox blanket thing is a myth, but what wasn't a myth is that our troops, or like Washington, was aware that the British were attempting something like biological warfare, or they suspected that they were trying something like biological warfare, because what the British would do is they would round up a bunch of people with smallpox, like just civilians, in their cities, and they would send them in the direction of wherever the Continentals were camped, so that the Continentals would take in these like refugees that were smallpox infected and hopefully spread it in the camp, because they knew that, obviously we've known for thousands of years that disease is catching. So it wasn't far-fetched to believe that that was part of the method there. And that's part of the reason why Washington became so gung-ho for the inoculation procedure, is because it basically made those types of little tactics ineffective, because all the troops were already inoculated. That didn't mean that their camp followers and stuff weren't also getting sick, but their fighting force was able to keep it together.
And a lot of them died on those horrific prisoner ships that the British used in which there was no inoculation and it was really dirty and sick and people were starving to death. And yeah, so I mean, I think sometimes we do take for granted living in 2026 how we can just go to the pharmacy, boom, get the pill and be okay in a couple of days. Yeah, back then they did not have antibiotics. They obviously didn't have any of the medications, most of the medications that we have today. So I mean, I am forever grateful that all these medical breakthroughs have been made, and that generally speaking, we don't have to deal with some of the horrors that they did, a couple hundred years ago.
Jim, you're muted. Jim, you are muted.
Sorry, I did it again. I had to be muted because I'm having some audio issues here on this different setup. But I doubt that General Washington was determined to throw out of the Continental Army anybody who did not get inoculated for smallpox, which was actually the policy.
Oh, that's funny.
Under Biden and all that. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I love our USA at 250 segment at the end of each of these podcasts, and I'm sure our audience does as well. We learn something new every week, thanks to you, Linnea. And it is really one thing that you stated, something that I always think of as we go through these segments, is that we do have this arrogance in modern times because we have so much technology and so many advancements in medicine. And like you said, we have book knowledge. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, as the cliche goes. But the irony is that as technology advances, like AI and stuff, humans are actually going to get dumber than we were 250 years ago because we don't have we don't need the discipline that they had to learn what they needed to learn to advance society.
Think about George Washington. He was a surveyor. He went out in the wilderness and had to find his way. I literally can't drive home. Well, I mean, I really probably could, but it would be difficult if I didn't have my GPS. Okay. I'm sorry, but
yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it when it comes to these kind of things.
No.
And that's part of the reason why AI worries me with the writing function and stuff of it, and even some of the research function, because I'm worried. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. And that is all the time we have today, unfortunately. Thank you, everyone, for your attention to these matters. We are live every week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Jim, what have you for our audience today?
We have, as always, on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, the Climate Realism Show. Our special guest is going to be from Denmark. And we're going to have a professor from Denmark who was fired from his university position. And we suspect it's probably because he doesn't toe the alarmist line. So we'll have him on the show to talk about that and so much more. See you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Chris?
Little different one here. So tomorrow's my brother's birthday. We're going to go to the Cubs-Yankees game. And I just please pray that it doesn't rain in the afternoon. Please.
All right, guys. Yes, absolutely. Pray for good weather for Chris.
Please. And a Cubs victory, of course.
Yeah, maybe if you pay a carbon tax or something, it'll prevent the rain from happening. Anyway, for audio listeners, please rate us well in whatever service you're using and leave us a review. Thank you so much to all of our usual panelists, and also, of course, to our viewers who are having a great time in the chat today. There's something about the COVID topic that gets everyone spun up. I don't blame them. It does for me, too. I probably could have gone an extra half hour over just talking about all the crazy stuff that we all witnessed. So, yeah, well, anyway, we will see you all again next week. We can play this awful video for you on the way out. Don't leave. Stay for it unless you don't want to cringe to death. So, all right, see you later.
Dr. Fauci, give us vaccines, help all the people who have been quarantined. We'll wear our masks and we'll have to stay distant. We'll wash our hands and we'll be more resistant. Fauci, yes? Promise us, please. We'll have a cure that can fight off this disease. Restrictions will lift with some ease. Dr. Fauci, don't forget me.